By the time my boss's wife looked at me across the moonlit water and said, "Do not tell him you held me," I already knew I was in trouble. Not the kind of trouble that gets you fired. The kind that crawls under your skin and changes the way you see your own life. The kind that starts in a quiet place, with two people who were never supposed to be alone together. My name is Ethan Cole. I am 27, and I live in a small apartment in Boston's Back Bay, where the rent eats half my paycheck and the walls are thin enough to hear my neighbors' late-night arguments. The view of the Charles River almost makes it worth it. Almost. By day, I work as a financial analyst at an investment firm downtown. I build spreadsheets, stare at charts, and sit through long meetings about market trends and risk models. It pays well. It looks good on paper. It keeps my parents proud and my landlord patient. But it is not what I dreamed of. When I was a kid, I wanted to write stories. Real stories. The kind that made your chest hurt. The kind you stayed up late to finish. Somewhere along the line, I traded that dream for a steady income and a corporate badge. Safe choices. Practical choices. Choices that made me feel like a locked book with a boring cover. My ex in college once told me I was like that. "A locked book," she said. "Nice to look at, but no one can read you." She left. I did not argue with her on the way out. The firm loves team-building events. HR calls them engagement experiences. I call them forced fun. In October, they sent us to a 3-day retreat at a lakeside resort near Concord, Massachusetts. Cedar cabins, fire pits, color-coded name tags, trust falls, icebreakers, forced smiles. Skipping was not an option. My boss, David Hartwell, made that clear. David is the vice president. 47, smooth, sharp, and always in control. He can charm a client in 5 minutes and cut down a junior analyst in 10 words. He is not cruel, just distant. Like life dealt him a winning hand, and he never lets you forget it. I respect him because I have to. I also keep out of his way whenever I can. His wife, Melissa, came to the retreat too. I had seen her at holiday parties and charity events, always next to David, in dresses that fit just right, with a glass of wine in her hand, blonde hair cut just above her shoulders, soft brown eyes, a polite smile that never made it all the way to her eyes. She always felt like part of the background, a quiet frame around David's loud life. We had spoken maybe twice. "Nice to see you. How are you?" That was it. She was just my boss's wife, nothing more. The first day at the lake was a blur of greetings, name tags, and small talk. The resort looked like a postcard. Golden leaves drifting down over the water. Cabins glowing warm under a gray sky. People from the firm were already drinking beer and signing up for kayaking and group hikes. I checked in, dropped my bag in my cabin, and wanted to disappear. I skipped the big group dinner. I claimed a headache and took a book out onto my small porch instead. A worn paperback I had read too many times. The air was cold and clean, smelling like pine and lake water. The other cabins hummed with laughter and music. I sat alone under a thin porch light and let the quiet wrap around me. Then I heard it. At first I thought it was the wind. A faint sound carried over the water. Then I heard it again. A soft, broken sob. I lowered my book and listened. The sound came from the direction of the lake, thin and raw, like someone was trying not to be heard and failing. My first instinct was to stay put. It was not my business. People fight. People cry. People fall apart for reasons that have nothing to do with you. I could pretend I did not hear it, go back to my pages, stay in my safe little box. But something in that sound would not let me. I put the book down, grabbed my jacket, and walked down the gravel path toward the water. My boots crunched on the small stones. The air felt even colder down by the shore. The lake was dark and still, a flat, black mirror with the cabins reflected in it. At the end of a long wooden dock, I saw a shape. Someone was sitting there, knees pulled up, shoulders hunched. As I got closer, the porch lights from the cabins caught her hair. Blonde. Loose, falling over the collar of an oversized sweater. "Melissa," My boss's wife. She did not see me at first. Her face was buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with quiet sobs that sounded like they had been going on for a while. I stopped a few feet back, my heart suddenly hammering. I could still walk away. She would never know I had been there. I could let her cry alone and pretend I had not seen my boss's wife breaking apart at the edge of a lake. Instead, I took a small breath and spoke, "Melissa." Her head snapped up. For a second, her eyes were huge, wide and bright with tears in the moonlight, fear, shock, embarrassment. All of it crossed her face at once. "Ethan," she said, her voice rough and shaky. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand, like she could erase what I had seen. "I did not think anyone was out here." "I was just on my porch," I said. I kept my hands in my pockets so she would not see they were shaking. "I heard you. I wanted to make sure you were okay." She let out a short, bitter little laugh. "No," she said, "I am not okay." Then, quieter, "Not at all." The wind picked up, carrying the cold off the water. I stepped forward and lowered myself onto the dock, leaving space between us. My boots hung over the edge, toes above the black surface. "You do not have to talk," I said. "If you want me to go, I will." I just could not sit and read like nothing was happening. She looked at me, really looked at me, like she was trying to decide if I was lying. If I was just being polite. "You are probably the only one here who would rather read than drink by the fire," she said after a moment. Her voice was still shaky, but there was a tiny curve at the corner of her mouth. "Guilty," I said. "Books do not try to make me fall backwards into someone's arms." She smiled, small but real, and it changed her face, took her out of David's shadow, made her look not like my boss's wife, but like a woman who had once laughed without thinking about it. The silence that followed did not feel as heavy as before. "I used to be someone," she said suddenly, eyes on the water. "Really someone." I turned my head, listening. "I was an architect," she went on, her voice low. "I designed buildings, clean lines, open spaces. I won awards. I had my name in magazines. I thought I knew who I was." Her fingers twisted the hem of her sweater. "Then I met David. I thought we were building something together, so I stepped back. I quit my job. I moved when he moved. I went to dinners and galas and played the part. Mrs. Hartwell. The supportive wife who smiles and nods." She let out a breath that was almost a sob. "This morning," she said, "I looked in the mirror and I did not know who I was looking at. I am 45, and I have spent years being invisible." Her words hit something in me I did not know was still sore. I thought of my own life, of the stories I never wrote, of the way I let safe and steady replace alive, of my own reflection some mornings, looking like a stranger in a nice shirt. "You are not invisible," I said quietly. "Not out here, not right now." She turned her head, searching my face like she was still not sure if I meant it. "You do not have to be kind," she said. "I am not," I answered. "I am just telling you what I see." Her eyes softened, just a little. We sat there for a long time after that. She talked. I listened. About late nights alone in a big house. About drawings she used to make and buildings she used to dream about. About the slow way a person can vanish while still standing in the same room. I did not try to fix it. I did not tell her what to do. I just stayed. When she shivered, trying to pretend she was not cold, I shrugged off my jacket and put it around her shoulders. Our hands brushed and something sharp and quiet moved between us. "Thanks," she whispered. By the time she finally stood and said she should go back before David noticed she was gone, the night felt different. The resort lights looked smaller. The lake felt larger. My own life felt less solid under my feet. I watched her walk away across the dark grass, my jacket still around her. I stayed on the dock, staring at the water, feeling like I had crossed some invisible line I could not step back over. I did not know it yet, but that night at the lake was only the beginning. The next morning felt like waking up after a strange dream. The resort dining hall buzzed with noise. People laughed over eggs and pancakes. HR kept talking about the great energy of the retreat. I sat at the end of one of the long wooden tables with a black coffee, trying to act normal while my mind was still out on the dock. I told myself not to look for her. I did anyway. Melissa sat near the front of the room next to David. He was in a pressed shirt, talking to one of the partners, his phone on the table beside his plate. She was in a light blouse, her hair smooth again, her face calm and composed. The woman from last night, the one on the dock with tear tracks on her cheeks, felt like another person. She glanced up and her eyes met mine across the room. For a second, the noise faded. It was just us. There was a flicker in her gaze, a small shift, like she wanted to say something. Then she looked away and laid her hand on the table between her and David, as if she remembered where she was and who she was supposed to be. I stirred my coffee and stared at the dark swirl. The day moved on. We had workshops, team exercises, and fake problem-solving games. I went where they told me to go, did what I had to do, and kept my head down. Whenever I saw Melissa, she was next to David, smiling that polite smile, listening while he talked. If she felt anything from the night before, she hid it well. Once, during a break, I stepped outside to get some air. The sky was gray, the lake flat and cold. As I walked toward the edge of the trees, I noticed her standing by a window inside the lodge, arms crossed over her chest, staring out at the water. She looked lost in thought. I took a step forward. Then David walked up behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder like he was claiming space without even knowing it. She turned, her expression shifting back to neutral as he spoke. I stopped and turned away. Whatever was going on between them was not mine to fix. Whatever had happened on the dock was not something I could drag into the daylight. That night was the last night of the retreat. There was a big bonfire scheduled, complete with marshmallows and cheesy group songs. Most people were excited. I could not think of anything I wanted less. I showed up because I had to. Stood at the edge of the circle, listened to a few jokes, and watched flames lick up into the dark. After half an hour, my skin felt tight, like I was wearing a shirt that did not fit. I slipped away when no one was looking. The path to the lake was darker than before. Clouds hid the moon. A thin mist clung to the ground. The wooden dock creaked under my boots as I walked to the end. I sat with my legs hanging over the water, my hands jammed into my jacket pockets, the cold air biting at my face. I told myself I just wanted quiet. I told myself I was not waiting for anyone. Footsteps crunched softly on the boards behind me. "Ethan." Her voice was low, almost unsure. I turned. Melissa stood a few feet away, wrapped in a long, dark sweater, the hem brushing her jeans. Her hair was a little messy, like she had pulled it back in a hurry. The wind off the lake lifted the loose strands. "Hey," I said, my heart suddenly racing. "Thought you were at the fire." "I was," she said. "For a while. Smile, laugh, nod at the right times. You know the drill." I did. She stepped closer and sat down beside me, leaving a small space, but not as much as the night before. The boards were cold under us. The lake stretched out, black and endless. "Did he notice you left?" I asked. "David?" She let out a soft breath. "He is talking to the partners. He will be fine." There was something tired in the way she said it, not angry, just worn out. For a while we just sat there in silence. The lights of the cabins glowed behind us. The faint sound of laughter from the bonfire carried on the wind. "How are you?" I asked finally. She smiled a little without looking at me. "Less of a disaster than last night," she said. "Thanks to you." "You would have been fine," I said. "Maybe," she said, "but you sat with me when you did not have to." That matters. Quote. I did not know how to answer that, so I just looked out at the water. The surface shifted in small ripples, catching scraps of light. "You said you used to design buildings," I said. "Ever think about going back?" She was quiet for a moment. "All the time," she said. "I even have my old sketchbooks in a box in the closet. I open them sometimes, then put them away. I tell myself it is too late, that my life is already set." "It is not too late," I said. "You say that like you believe it," she said gently. "I do," I answered. "For you, for me, For anyone who is still breathing. She turned her head toward me. The dock was dim, but I could still see her eyes. What about you? She asked. You ever think about riding again? I laughed once, but it did not feel funny. Every day, I said, I tell myself I will start again when things are less busy, when I am less tired, when life gives me a sign. Maybe this is it, she said softly. The words hung between us, small but heavy. A gust of wind rushed over the water then, colder than before. Melissa shivered and pulled her sweater tighter. I noticed how thin it was. The edge of the dock was open and the breeze cut right through us. You are freezing, I said. I am fine, she started, but her teeth clicked on the last word. Here, I said, already shrugging off my jacket. She held up a hand. Ethan, you do not have to. I know, I said. I want to. I draped the jacket over her shoulders. As I did, my arm brushed the back of her neck. Her skin was warm from the lingering heat of the fire, but there was a slight tremble in her muscles. She pulled the jacket close, inhaling once, like the heat and scent hit her at the same time. Thank you, she said quietly. Another stronger gust pushed across the lake, and she shifted closer without seeming to think about it, our sides almost touching now. The contact sent a line of electricity up my arm. You are still shaking, I said. She laughed softly. That obvious? She tried to tuck her hands under her arms, but her fingers brushed mine instead. On instinct, I turned my hand and wrapped it around hers. Her hand was small and cold, the fingers tense at first, then slowly relaxing in my grip. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then she moved. Not away. Closer. She leaned into me, just enough that her shoulder rested against my arm, her head tilted slightly toward my chest. The dock wobbled under our combined weight, but held. My body went tight. My mind screamed all the reasons this was wrong. She was my boss's wife. She was older. She was married. He was 20 yards away at a fire pit. But another part of me, quiet and stubborn, just felt her shake slowly fade as the warmth spread beneath my jacket and my hand around hers. Her voice came out low, barely louder than the wind. Ethan? Yeah. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. If I stay like this for a minute, she said, her voice raw, can we pretend I am not his wife and you are not his employee and we are just two people trying not to freeze on a dock in October? My throat tightened. Yeah, I said softly. We can do that. Quote. She let out a breath that sounded almost like relief and settled against me a little more, the side of her body fitting against mine. I wrapped my other arm around her without thinking, pulling her in enough to block the wind. For a while, that was all there was. The cold air, the dark water, her heartbeat, faint but there, against my ribs. Then she spoke again, and her words went straight into my chest. Ethan, she whispered, do not tell him you held me. The sentence was simple, but the way she said it, the way her fingers tightened around mine, made it feel like more than a request. It was a confession, a line drawn, a secret placed carefully between us. I will not, I said. I promise. She nodded once against my shoulder. We stayed like that for another minute, then another. Not talking, not moving more than we had to. Just breathing and listening to the quiet, while the rest of the world burned marshmallows and sang songs. I held her because she was cold and lonely, and I was too. And because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something that mattered, even if it would never fit into a spreadsheet. I did not know how we would face each other in the daylight after this. I just knew that when she finally pulled away and stood up, the dock felt colder without her. She handed me my jacket back, then hesitated, her fingers lingering on the fabric. Thank you, she said again, but this time her voice was different. Deeper. You are welcome, I said. She looked at me one last time, and there was something in her eyes that had not been there before. Not just pain, not just gratitude. Something that scared me and steadied me at the same time. Then she turned and walked back toward the fire, leaving me alone with the lake, the cold, and the promise I had just made. Do not tell him you held me. I knew I would not. But I also knew something in me had shifted again, and there was no going back to the man who came here with a book and a plan to stay invisible. The next day, I woke up with my heart already racing. For a second, I did not remember why. Then the memory of the doc hit me like cold water. Her weight against my chest, her hand in mine. Her whisper, "Do not tell him you held me." The retreat's last breakfast was louder than usual. People were already talking about heading back to the city, swapping numbers with colleagues they would probably never see outside of work again. The smell of coffee and syrup hung heavy in the air. I took a seat near the end of the long table with my plate and my coffee and tried to act normal. David walked in a few minutes later, laughing with one of the partners. He looked the same as always, perfectly pressed, perfectly sure of himself. Melissa walked beside him, a step behind, carrying her own coffee. He sat near the center of the room with the senior staff. She took the seat next to him. I told myself not to look. My eyes did it anyway. She felt it. I could tell. She glanced up once, like a reflex. Our eyes met over the heads of our coworkers. For a moment, everything else went quiet. There was a flash of something in her face I could not quite name. Not guilt, not regret, but something heavy and aware. A shared secret hanging between us. Then she looked away and folded her hands on the table in front of her like nothing had happened. David nudged her shoulder and said something. She gave him a practiced smile, the kind I had seen at company parties. The kind that used to look normal to me. Now it looked like a mask. The rest of the morning moved in fast forward. Wrap-up meetings. Thank you speeches. HR promising everyone they had grown together. People loading bags into cars, calling rides, slapping each other on the back. I kept expecting to run into her alone, on the path, by the cabins, at the car lot. I did not. I only saw her once more, standing near their black SUV while David talked to a partner a few feet away. She was staring at the lake again, her arms wrapped around herself. For a second, her eyes drifted in my direction. Our gazes almost met. Then David opened the driver's door, and she climbed into the passenger seat. I watched their car pull away, the tires crunching over the gravel, until it disappeared through the trees. On the drive back to Boston, the highway stretched out in front of me in a gray blur. The radio was off. My thoughts were loud. I had not done anything technically wrong. I had not kissed her. I had not touched her in a way I could not explain. I had just held her while she was cold and broken and needed someone, but I could still feel the heat of her pressed against my side. The way she relaxed against me like she had not let herself lean on anyone in a long time. The way her voice shook when she asked me for that simple, impossible promise. Do not tell him you held me. By the time I got back to my apartment, Boston felt different. The Charles River still moved in slow, dark waves. The brick buildings still leaned into the sky. The train still rattled. But something in me had shifted. Work went back to normal. Emails, reports, meetings. David walked the halls like a man who owned the place, talking about numbers and clients in the next quarter. He did not look any different. If he sensed that anything had changed with his wife, he did not show it. I kept my head down and did my job, but my mind drifted a lot more than it used to. I would be in the middle of a presentation, and suddenly I would see the doc again. Feel the cold air, hear her voice saying she used to be someone. I would be walking home past the brownstones and picture her looking in the mirror that morning, not recognizing herself. I thought about reaching out, sending some simple message. Are you okay? Did you make it home? You are not invisible. Each time my hand hovered over my phone, I stopped. She was my boss's wife. Whatever had happened at the lake, she had chosen very carefully what to say and what to hide. She had asked me not to talk, not to reveal what had passed between us. I was not going to be the one who crossed that line. 3 weeks went by like that. Work, sleep, running along the river just to quiet my head. Nights with old books that did not pull me in the way they used to. Then, one rainy Friday afternoon, an email appeared in my inbox. The sender was just a long string of letters and numbers. No name, no subject line. It looked like spam. I almost deleted it without opening it. Something made me click. There was only one sentence inside. Thank you for seeing me, for not looking away. No name, no signature, no details. I did not need them. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse pounding in my ears. The office noise faded into a dull blur. David was in a meeting down the hall. Phones were ringing. People were talking. None of it felt real for a moment. I read the line again. Thank you for seeing me. For not looking away. I could see her on the dock, eyes swollen from crying, shoulders shaking under my jacket. I could see her sitting next to David at breakfast, her face composed but her eyes far away. I could see her staring out the window at the lake when she thought no one was watching. She had sent this from some throwaway address, no reply needed, no reply wanted. But it was proof that the night had mattered to her too, that it was not just some weird scene my mind had built into something bigger than it was. I closed the email, but I did not delete it. I could not make myself erase it. It stayed there, a quiet little mark in my inbox, more important than any chart or memo. That weekend, I pulled out an old cardboard box from under my bed. Inside were notebooks. From college. From the years before I put on a tie and started giving my time to numbers. I opened one at random. Rough pages. Messy handwriting. A half-finished story about a boy who wanted to leave his hometown and a girl who painted houses blue so they would feel like the sky. It was not good. But it was mine. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed and kept reading. Line after line of old thoughts, old dreams, old versions of myself. I put the notebook down only when the light outside had faded and my apartment was dark. I turned on a lamp, grabbed a pen, and opened to a blank page. For a long time, nothing came. Then I wrote, there was a woman on a dock in October, and she did not know who she was anymore. The words were clumsy, but they were true. I kept writing. A page. Then another. Not neat. Not perfect. Just real. I did not know if it was a story or just me talking to myself. But it felt like something had opened that had been closed for a long time. At work, nothing between me and David changed. He stayed sharp and untouchable. I stayed polite and quiet. We talked about numbers and clients and targets. We did not talk about lakes or wives or the way a person can disappear in plain sight. I did not see Melissa at the office. She did not come by for lunches or parties. If David mentioned her at all, it was in passing. My wife has a charity thing. My wife met so-and-so. Just words, no weight. The next time I saw her, it was by accident. I was walking through Cambridge on another gray evening, trying to clear my head before going home. The rain had just stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining under the streetlights. There was a small bookstore on the corner. I had walked past it 100 times, a cramped little place with a crooked sign and soft light in the windows. On impulse, I went inside. The bell over the door chimed. The air smelled like paper and dust and something warm. I wandered past the fiction shelves toward the back, where a small sign on the wall caught my eye. Architecture for Beginners. Friday night adult class. Learn to see space differently. Voices came from a door that stood half open nearby. Curious, I moved closer and looked in. There was a small room with a whiteboard at the front and a few tables lined with notebooks and pencils. A handful of people sat facing the board, mostly older adults, listening. At the front, drawing a simple floor plan with quick, sure lines, was Melissa. Her hair was tied back in a loose knot, a few strands falling around her face. She wore a simple shirt with the sleeves pushed up to her elbows. There was a marker in her hand, black ink on the board. Her voice was steady, clear and warm, as she explained load-bearing walls and natural light. She moved with an ease I had never seen at those stiff company events. She smiled. Really smiled. The kind that reached her eyes. She looked alive. My heart stuttered. I must have made some sound because she glanced toward the door. Our eyes met. For a second, everything inside me dropped and then rushed back up at the same time. She did not startle. She did not look away. Her mouth curved into a small, knowing smile. She gave the tiniest nod, almost just from one side of her mouth. Then she turned back to the board and kept teaching. I stayed where I was in the doorway, hidden enough not to distract her, but close enough to hear every word. She talked about lines and balance, and how a building should make people feel, not just what it should cost. I realized then that whatever had happened on that dock, whatever she had lost in the years after, she was finding her way back to herself. And somehow, without meaning to, I had been a small part of that. I did not know yet what it would mean for us. For me. For my life in Boston, with my spreadsheets and my newly opened notebooks. All I knew was that the woman at the lake who had asked me not to tell her husband I held her was not invisible anymore, and seeing her like this made my own reflection feel a little less like a stranger. I stayed in the doorway until the end of her class. The students leaned forward, asking questions, laughing at her small jokes. She moved between them with a kind of quiet confidence, checking sketches, pointing at lines, correcting angles with a light hand. It was like watching someone slip back into their own skin. When she wrapped up, she gave them a small assignment and told them to bring their drawings next week. The chairs scraped the floor as they stood. A few came up to ask her something, and she listened with that same focus she had on the dock by the lake, but without the heaviness. I stepped back into the shelves before they filed out, pretending to study the spines of art books until the room behind me went quiet. Ethan. Her voice came from the doorway. I turned. She stood there with the marker still in her hand, a faint smudge of black ink on her finger, her hair a little loose from teaching. She looked tired, but in a good way, like she had used herself for something that mattered. "Hey," I said. "Sorry if I was in the way. I saw the sign. I did not expect to see you." She smiled, small but real. "I did not expect to see you either," she said, "but I am glad I did." We stood there for a moment between the shelves, the light from the back room spilling over her shoulder. "How long have you been teaching?" I asked. "A few weeks," she said. "A friend runs the program. They were short on instructors. I almost said no. Then I thought about that night at the lake and decided I was done saying no to myself." Her eyes met mine as she said it, and I felt that same pull from the dock, only steadier now. "You look different," I said, "in a good way." She let out a quiet breath and leaned one shoulder against the shelf. "I feel different," she said. I opened my old sketchbooks. It was like opening a door I had nailed shut. Scary. Messy. But once I started, I could not stop. Then this class came up and I thought, why not? I used to be good at this. I still am. "You are," I said. I could tell from the hallway. She tilted her head. "You were listening in." Quote. "Guilty," I said. "Again." She laughed softly. The sound pulled the tension out of my shoulders. For a second, the bookstore faded. I could almost hear the lake again, feel the cold air, her weight against my chest. She must have felt it too, because her expression shifted, growing more serious. "How are you?" she asked. "Really?" I thought about lying, saying work was fine, life was fine, everything was fine, the usual script. Instead, I shrugged and told the truth. "I have been better," I said, "but I have also been worse. I started writing again. Little things, nothing special, but it feels like breathing after holding my breath for a long time." Her eyes lit up. "You did?" "Yeah," I said. "I dug out old notebooks. Some of it is awful, some of it is not bad, most of it is just me trying, but that night at the lake would not leave me alone until I put it on a page." Her gaze softened. "I am glad," she said. "I hoped you would. You look like a man with words stuck in his throat." "I was," I said. "Maybe I still am, but fewer of them now." We both smiled at that. Behind her, the last of the students drifted out of the back door, leaving the small room empty. The store was quiet again, just the soft hum of old lights and distant traffic through the glass. "Does he know?" I asked before I could stop myself. She did not ask who I meant. She just looked down at the marker in her hand, turned it between her fingers, then back up at me. "David knows I am teaching," she said. "I told him I wanted to do something with my time besides dinners and events. He thinks it is a hobby, something to keep me busy. He does not know what it feels like. That part is mine." She hesitated, then added, "He does not know about the dock, about the crying, About you. That part is mine, too. And ours, I said quietly. She held my eyes and nodded once. Yes, she said, and ours. The weight of that settled between us. Not heavy like guilt. Heavy like something fragile we both knew how to carry now. I meant what I said. I told her. I never told him. I never will. I know, she said. I believed you when you promised. Her voice dropped a little, softer. I do not regret it, she added. That night, you holding me, I want you to know that. Something in my chest eased that I had not known was tight. I do not either, I said, even if it still scares me when I think about it. That is probably why it matters, she said. We fell quiet again, standing between shelves of books, our lives threading together for a few more stolen minutes. This, I said finally, gesturing toward the back room, is this a secret too? Quote. She shook her head. No, she said, not like the lake. I am done hiding from myself. If people find out I am teaching, that I am drawing again, that is fine. They can live with it or not. What about him? I asked. She gave a small, tired smile. David lives in his own world, she said. I have been orbiting it for years. I am not sure I want to anymore. But that is not a decision I will make because of a class or because of you. That is mine to wrestle with. I nodded. I get that. I know you do, she said. That is why I could talk to you. That night and now. Quote. A customer walked past us, giving us a quick, polite glance before moving on. The sound of footsteps on old wood reminded me where we were. She looked at the clock on the wall. I should clean up before the next group comes in, she said. They use the room for a writing workshop after me. Fitting, I said. Her mouth curved. Maybe you should sign up. Maybe I should teach it, I said without thinking. She raised a brow. Should you? Not yet, I said. Maybe someday. She studied me for a moment, then nodded, as if she could see that version of me already. Ethan, she said. Yeah. I will not send any more messages, she said. No more emails from secret addresses. I do not want to build something in the shadows. That is not who I want to be. But if you ever walk past this store on a Friday and feel like sitting in the back of the room, I will not pretend I do not see you. A warmth spread through my chest, not the sharp rush of panic from the lake, but something calmer, deeper. I would like that, I said, knowing you are here, doing this. She smiled. It helps, she said, knowing you are out there too, writing, even if I never read a word. You might, I said, one day. I hope so, she answered. We did not hug. We did not touch. The last time we had done that, it had to be hidden under darkness and cold. This time, we just stood there and let our eyes say what our hands did not need to. Thank you. I see you. Keep going. Good night, Ethan, she said finally. Good night, Melissa, I said. I walked out of the bookstore into the cool air, the city buzzing around me, the sky hanging low and gray. I felt strange, lighter and heavier at the same time. On the train home, I watched the buildings slide past. Brick and glass and steel. Lines and shapes someone had once drawn on paper. I thought of her in that back room, drawing lines again, teaching people how to make space, how to think about light and shadow and weight. At home, I sat at my small table by the window, opened my notebook, and kept writing. Not about a forbidden love affair or some dramatic scandal. That was never really what this was. It was a story about a woman who forgot herself and found a dock, and a stranger who listened. It was about a man who thought his life was set and realized it was not. It was about seeing and being seen in a world that made it very easy to look away. Melissa and I did not become some secret couple. We did not run off or burn everything down, but we left a mark on each other. She went back to her class on Fridays, to her sketchbooks, to the long, hard work of rebuilding who she was. I went back to my numbers, but not only to them. I gave some time back to the boy who wanted to tell stories. Sometimes, when I run along the Charles River at night, I think of the lake. of the sharp October air, of her voice in the dark. Do not tell him you held me. I never did. What I can tell you is this. Holding her for those few quiet minutes did not just keep her warm. It woke me up. And in its own strange way, it gave both of us something we had almost lost, a chance to start being who we were meant to be again.